Hi, this is Andrew. Thanks for joining me. Today's video is episode 2 in the Python series where we're going to start looking at variables. So we left off last time with Python installed. We have idle on the system. I have a new file here to work with today. What we're going to do is actually start using variables. So I'm going to pull up this Word document here. A variable is just a place to store things. So it's very much like this table here. And a variable needs a name and it needs a value, and that's it. So let's say we have a variable we want to store in the program or using the program called age. And we'll set a value on that, and we'll say 40. Now, there's all these other places to store variables, and there's really an almost limitless number of places that you can store variables. But you have to have a name to store a variable. I can't put a 50 here and have that work. It needs to have a name there. So that it could be that is age, and this is another variable, and this could be something like hair color, or we could do hair underscore color, and this would be brown. So these are different ways of storing variables. That's all it is. Now we could come in here and we could say, okay, the age is not accurate. We're going to make it, say, 47. And the hair color is not accurate. We're going to change this to gray. But it doesn't matter. All of the variable name changes. Now, if we do something with this later on, if we were to display this on the screen or change the age, all we have to do is reset the value. So if we were to say age equals or some number equals age minus 10, age a decade ago, mean whatever you want to do, and you do a calculation on it, and then you do that calculation again later on a new value, there'll be a new value there. So right now focus on this is a variable, and we're putting a value into it. And we will talk about different variable types later on, but right now it's just a number or a word or a sentence. So let's try that. Let's actually use Python to do something with that. So we're going to go to our blank document. We're going to call this Professor Andrew and testing variables. So now, first thing I'm going to do, I'm going to use a variable called greeting. Now, in order to tell this that we want to assign a value, we use the equal sign. Now, the next thing is we need to tell it it is going to be a string. That's a type of variable. That's basically letters, words that you don't do math on. So this variable is how are you? So we just defined that. Now, if I want to use that, I could say print, and in the previous video, I could have typed right here, how are you? How are you? Let's try that again. How are you? And it would have displayed the same way. But if I, right now, instead of doing how are you, I can type greeting. Because I might use this multiple times. Now I can go in here and, well, let's run this program. Now I'm going to hit F5. I haven't saved it before, so it's going to say source must be saved. Now I can go into my Python directory and save it as testing underscore variables. And now when it runs, it says, how are you? I'm not prompting to get an answer. That's something we'll do later on. But if I were to go in and say, you know what, I don't like that greeting. I want to change it. I'm going to change this to go away. Now if I run the program, save it, now it gives this new entry here without changing anything in the print statement. So that is using a variable called using a string as variable. Now let's try using numbers. So instead of this, and rather than delete this, I'm going to just comment it out. That means that part of the program doesn't run. And what it does is it leaves it there in case I want to use it again later on while I'm testing things out. I'm going to create a variable called x. I could call it length, I could call it width, I could call it anything I want, but I'm going to say x, and I'm going to say it equals 3. Now I'm going to say y equals 7. And now I'm going to do something different. So I could now display x and y. I could just say print x and then print y, and let's run that and see what it looks like. And it prints 3 and then 7. But what if I wanted to do something else? I could say z equals x plus y. Y. And now if I do this right now, it will display the same thing because I've created z, but I haven't done anything with it. So I'm going to print z. And now if I run that, I get 3, 7, the same x and y, and z is the sum of those two. It's adding 3 and 7. Now let's say I wanted to do, instead of y as 7, I wanted to change that to 8. Now I can run that, and now I have 3 and 8, and add those together, and we get 11. Now, what if I change my mind, and I wanted to, instead of add, I want to multiply? When I was talking about length and width, maybe that's the length and width of something. So I can use the asterisk to multiply, and I'll F5 again. And this time I have 3 and 8, but when I multiply them together, I get 24. So this shows using variables as numbers. Now, we talked a little bit about, we have a string, we have numbers. When we're using a string, and I'm going to go back to that first part. Let's leave that as x. I'm going to comment out these lines so I can use that first section again. So when I go up to the first section and I say go away, and I print that greeting, what if I wanted to, well, I could use single quotes to do that as well. Now, if I were to do F5, that runs the same way it did before, go away. But what if I wanted to say, go back here and say, go away, Andrew's friends. So now you see how the colors changed. Basically what's happening is it sees go away Andrew, and it sees the end of the string as that single quote there. So if I try to run this, it's going to give me an error because it doesn't know what, it's an invalid syntax, something's wrong here. So this is where I could go back to the beginning of that. I could go back to the beginning of the statement, turn it into a double quote. And I can run that, and now now it knows that this single quote doesn't end anything because it started with a double quote. And I can do it the other way as well. Instead of using, if I say go away, instead of Andrew's friends, we're going to put quotes around Professor Andrew, because it's not a real name. So we're going to just put quotes around it. And then it's just really confusing things because it's saying this is a string, this is a command, Professor Andrew is a command, and it doesn't know what it is. So it's going to give an invalid syntax. So again, that's where our problem is. Now if we wanted single quotes in, or double quotes in there, we could change this back to single quotes, and there we've defined our string this way. And now we get go away, quote, Professor Andrew. So this is a way of defining, you may need to define your strings in multiple ways or other things you can do with that. So that's a string. We already looked at integers, numbers, they're whole numbers. The other thing we can do is we can say, let's go back here, let's say we don't want x to be 3. We want x to be, say, 3.14. And y will actually change it to r. And then we want to do area equals x times r to the second power. So we're going to see this a little bit more, but that works for that. We could put these in parentheses to kind of clean up the math on it a little bit and make sure things are working right or we're clear about what's happening. And instead of printing x and y, which we don't have, so right now if I run the program, unexpected indent, well, I didn't delete everything here, so I will fix that. It is giving an error saying y is not defined. You're asking me to print y, and there is no value for y. And that's because I changed its value to r. So I changed its name. R. So we're going to print r. And down here, if I ran it again, it would say no z, so I'm going to print a. Now, earlier I said you don't change names of variables. This is changing the actual variables in the program. It's changing them not while the program's running. I'm not saying that a used to be z and now it's a. This is a new program. So each time I run this, it's a new program. So now I have, still printing out that message, go away Professor Andrew. We have 3.14 is x. We have r is 8, and that looks like maybe it should be the area of the circle. So this is just doing different math. Now, you just saw I did multiplication. Earlier I did addition. This is raising r to the second power. Now, what if I did a subtraction? And instead of, they can stay with those same numbers. I can change this to x minus r. Again, now we're into not really using real numbers, but we can subtract. And what we're seeing are the results of that. So we just saw integers. These are called floating point numbers. They're numbers with decimals on them. So it's saying 3.14 or some kind of number like that. There are actually much more complicated numbers some, I should say, there are unexpected, there's unexpected math you can be doing. So you can do x divided by r. And now, what do we get for a result there? That is, let's see, 3 divided by 8, and it gives us 0.375. We can also do a floor division, which is in other programming languages, this is what you would normally see, but this is actually, let's do it the other way. Let's do r divided by x, and if we do that, we'll get 2.66, but if we do r with the floor division, we're only going to get 2. Now what's happening here is it's saying divide this number and ignore the remainder. So the remainder is 0.6666. Just ignore that. We don't care about the remainder. I just want to know what whole numbers we have left. Now there's also a percent, which is actually modulus. And if I run that, it actually gives me the remainder. So instead of saying 3 divided by 8, let's do 4 and 24. I can't even figure out how to do this. And now when I do the division, it's going to be 23 divided by 4. And it doesn't care what the whole number is. All it cares about is the remainder. So that remainder is 3. Or if I went back to my 3 and my 9, 3 and my 8, and instead did 7, there's a remainder of 1. So these are mathematical operations that we can do on variables. Just all the standard ones, and then a few that are a little bit different from what you might be used to, but are really important for both computer science, cybersecurity. This one actually comes into play more than you would expect. So now let's look at strings again. And let's say we wanted to let's say instead of greeting, we wanted to print a name. And instead of go away Professor Andrew, we just did Professor Andrew, all lowercase. And now I need to get rid of this quote, especially. Now I'm going to print this name. And while I'm at it, these I'm going to just get rid of for now. I know I said comment them out, but right now we want to see what it looks like. Prints out the name. Now, what if I don't like that? What if I want to capitalize the P and the A? You notice that I left them lowercase. Well, what I can do is go here. I could change it in the variable, but what if I'm looking at a lot of names and I just always want to print it out? I can use a function called title. And I just type that there, and I'm saying, do this title on the name variable and print that out. So do yes, save that. And you see how it says, even though the variable is all lowercase, it capitalizes the first part of each, the first letter in each word. So if it was my full name, it would capitalize the full name. So that's title. Now, what if I wanted to do all capitalized for some reason? I could do upper, and when I run that, it does the whole thing in uppercase. So just another way to display what's there. Now, the other thing I can do, the other common one that's kind of in that same category, is lower. And that does nothing because it's already all lowercase. But let's say this were not all lowercase, but I did want to print it out all lowercase for whatever reason. It still prints out all lowercase even though I changed the variable. So this is just, there are other things you can do. You can remove blank space. So if I have a space right here, you can display it with or without that space. You can put tabs in there. So one other thing we might want to do is actually print out a number. But when you try to print a number as part of a string, it's going to not work the way you expect, because a number is an integer, a string is a set of characters. So if I have Professor Andrew and I put H-E-I-G-H-T there, and I say 70, height equals 70, and then I want my message, instead of name, I want to print out a whole message. So I'm going to put message here, but I need to create the message. So I will type message equals, and it's going to be name, which is, well, if I just run that, you see, it prints out the name, even though it's message, that's assigned there. But what if I want to print more than that? I want to say Professor Andrew, and I'll do a plus sign, and then I can do a quote. And I want this to be a space is and a space. And then I want to print out the height. So height is, I just type height, or plus H-E-I plus H-E-I-G-H-T. Now, if I run this, it doesn't work because it can't concatenate string because it's an integer. So what we're going to do is we're going to turn this height into a string. We're going to say here, we're going to use a function that says turn height into str. And there we go. Now I can do this, and it's Professor Andrew is 70. Now the question is 70 what? It could be saying that I'm 70 years old. It could be saying that I'm 70 inches tall. It could be 70 centimeters tall. We don't know. Let's clean it up a little bit. Now, this is a common thing. As you go, you say, okay, I want to describe it more. I'm going to put a quote and inches tall. Now, I run that. Now you notice that it's just kind of squeezed together. There's no space. Okay, that means I need to put a space here to clean it up a little bit more. And this is just the common process. You work through it again and again, and there we go. So that's kind of the basics of variables. So the last thing I want to do is actually a challenge. So let's get that set up, and we'll talk about what we're going to do. Okay. So our challenge is to actually create a program that's going to convert Fahrenheit to Celsius. So the formula to convert Fahrenheit to Celsius is the temperature in Fahrenheit minus 32 times 5/9, and that equals C. So we're going to create a variable with the temperature Fahrenheit, use the formula to convert to Celsius, and display a message describes and shows both. So we're going to say 50 degrees Fahrenheit is 10 degrees Celsius. We want to have a message like that. And then we're going to change the Fahrenheit variable and repeat the message. So let's get started with that. I'm going to put this over here, and I'm going to start out by saying Professor Andrew and convert F to C. So first thing we want to do is define a variable. We want to define Fahrenheit, and in the instructions it listed in uppercase. We're going to use lowercase. So F equals, and we're going to start out with 50. We'll see what that works out to be. Now the next thing is we need to define C. So Celsius equals, and we're going to just use this same formula, and we're going to use parentheses and say F minus 32 times, and in this times is an X because that's, what we are used to seeing in math, but in programming, in Python, it's an asterisk. That's the multiplication. So now we do 5 divided by 9, and again we'll put those in parentheses. Now we want to see, let's just start out by print F, and we need to put it inside of parentheses, and print C. So this is just testing out the first step of the program. Let's see, now I can do F5, source must be saved, and I will save this in my Python folder as F2C. And I just saw 50 and 10. So that works. 50 and 10. Or let's say I want to test it out with a number I know. I know that 212 degrees Fahrenheit is 100 degrees Celsius. So there we go. Once again, 212, 100. So I just tried, and the last one I'll try is freezing. Just kind of a sanity check. Make sure that what I'm doing is working the way we would expect. 32 degrees Fahrenheit is 0 Celsius. So we have that. Now the part we're missing is make it look nice. Instead of print F and C, we want to print, and we'll leave those there for now. We'll create a message equals, and we'll do quotes. Although actually we're starting out with, according to this, we're starting out with a number. We need to turn that number into into a string. So first thing we're going to do is F, and then we're going to do a plus sign, and we're going to say it's degrees Fahrenheit is. That's the next set of words we need. So I'm going to do start a quote and space and degrees Fahrenheit is, and a space and there, and then I'll do a plus Now I need a string to turn the Celsius into a string, and I'll do a plus and quote and degrees Celsius and close quote, single quote. You can use either, just make sure you have to be consistent with that. Now, if everything worked and I do go down here, I can print message. Now, I could have put this whole thing inside of here. That would have worked as well. But let's see, did I do it right? Well, we have 32 and 0 because I left that part there. It's still kind of a troubleshooting step. 32 degrees Fahrenheit is 0 degrees Celsius. Now, the last piece is in the same script, change Fahrenheit variable and display the message with a new calculation. So I'm going to say right here, we're not getting into loops. Don't worry about what those are yet. F equals 50. And if I do the message again, well, let's grab it from here. I'm going to just do a copy, go down here, paste, and when I run it, something's wrong. Because I start out with 32, and that gave me 0. Now I did 32 degrees Fahrenheit is 0 degrees Celsius. But when I went to 50 degrees Fahrenheit, it's still saying 0 degrees Celsius, and that's not correct. So let's go through, and this is a really important tool or technique for figuring out what's wrong. Let's go through and manually think about what all the variables are. So we start out with F equals 32 and C equals this formula. We displayed them both. And then we have a message that says that F equals, and we made it into a string so we could add it together with the words, degrees Fahrenheit is, and then we add the words of the C, and then degrees Celsius. Then we print the message. Then we do F equals 50. But we never actually say C is anything different. So C is still what it was defined as up here. So we created F, we defined C, and it stays the same. So even when we change F, we never redefine C. So what we need to do is redefine C there. And it's good to, go through this process. Let's try doing it from there. So it's good to go through this process and really figure out what math is happening, what is my variable value at each step. And the only way to do this is to just practice it and work at it and try different things. So if I run this program now, we get 32 degrees Fahrenheit is 0 degrees Celsius. 50 degrees Fahrenheit is 10 degrees Celsius. And if instead of 50 here, I wanted to set it to 100 degrees Fahrenheit, we would see that is 37.77 degrees Celsius. So different ways of doing it, but we're all in everything here. We're just playing with variables to do different functions. We can be calculating areas. We can be converting degrees Fahrenheit to Celsius. Very common thing we do in any kind of programming language. So feel free to play around, change up what the assignment is or what this task is, and try it different ways. You can find the formula online for converting Celsius to Fahrenheit. Very similar, just reversed. And that's the kind of the way to learn this, is to say, well, what if I did this and tried a different way? And what if I did this and tried a different way? These are not examples that came from the book that I referenced in the last class, but this is the chapter on variables. And there's some more information in the book about variables. So if you wanted to read through that, you certainly could. So that's all I have for you today. Thanks for watching.